Welcome to the Recovery Lab podcast. We're glad you were able to join us. Recovery Lab hopes to destigmatize addiction and normalize recovery.
Our platform provides an avenue to share the many stories of those that have recovered from addiction, providing for the listener the most basic antidote to addiction.
Hope.
Yeah. What?
All right, everybody, we're back. This is episode number 85.
84.
84 of the Recovery Lab podcast series. My name is Drew Hassan.
I'm Daniel Anderson.
We are the Recovery Lab, coming to you today, Sunday, July 7th. Mm-hmm. And so we thought today that we would talk about a commonly heard phrase in the recovery community, that your best thinking got you here. Mm-hmm. And in an effort to spread some knowledge about what does that actually mean, we're going to dive into the realm of cognitive bias today. So literally, your best thinking did get you into addiction. Your best thinking provided the decisions that led to presumably the listeners, being in active addiction. Mm-hmm. We found ways to justify our behavior. We found ways to continue engaging in perverse, dangerous activities, and we engaged in conduct that promoted a continuation of the cycle of self-defeating behavior. And a lot of that stems from our poor thinking and our corrupted logic. So the most common, so cognitive bias is an umbrella term that means maybe not any, but it encompasses a number of systemic ways that we employ poor logic to approach a situation. So it comes from our own brain's desire to seek efficiency in dealing with large amounts of data and to come up with easily repeatable solutions so that we are not too taxed in trying to figure something out. So I know that's kind of broad, but I think when we get into some of these definitions and distinctions, the listener and you will easily be able to see how I do that. I know how I do that.
Yeah.
So the number one cognitive bias that we tend to engage in, and it's not just people in recovery, this is humans at large, is called confirmation bias. And when you go to law school, you certainly learn about the dangers of confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is the tendency to hear and select only that information that conforms to your worldview. You think that your belief is the correct one, and so you have a tendency to seek out other people that believe the same thing.
So basically, you only hear what you want to hear.
You only hear what you want to hear. And you can see this kind of writ large, especially in the comment section of your favorite social media platform. Mm-hmm. Because if you go on there and you say something, I believe that X are bad people, you are probably going to hear a whole bunch about how, yes, X are bad people and doing Y is a bad thing. And people will just tell you, they call it the echo chamber for a reason. It's people mimicking and echoing the exact sentiments without considering some contrary viewpoint. So we do this in recovery all the time. And it kind of, it bleeds and leaches over into other areas of cognitive bias when we engage in confirmation bias, it's kind of word salad there, but so not taking into consideration that you may be wrong is dangerous for someone in recovery. So we see confirmation bias in the refuting of confirmation bias in the relationship with the sponsor or my relationship with you, a trusted friend who can tell me, hey, I may be wrong. You may be thinking about this wrongly, or you may be not appreciating how your own behavior led to this outcome that you don't like.
Yeah, that's for someone that has not gone to law school and is perhaps not as well versed and cultured as someone like yourself.
I don't know about that. Well, look, I'll tell you why I started thinking about this.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Terrence Howard, the actor, he was in the first Iron. He was in some show called Hustle and Flow, and he's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
So he's been making the rounds lately on some podcasts, saying some pretty outlandish stuff. Like at first, I thought maybe this was he was playing a character of sorts on these podcasts, and like it's some sort of performance art. Because he sounds batshit crazy. And he goes into how he's found new math and how the concrete foundation of mathematics as it's currently taught to students is wrong, and how 1 times 1 is 2, and he has a formula to prove it. And then he goes into this long spiel about new shapes that he's found, and he's named them after his children and things. I mean, but he's dead serious.
Oh, so he's on Adderall.
Look, he's got a book out that's free on his website. And so the first time I saw him giving this spiel, and I mean, believe me, he's dead serious. He takes to task Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yes.
Who is a famed astrophysicist. And he says, I gave my book to Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he shit-canned it, and he did this, and he did that, and he did this, and he did that. And so Neil deGrasse Tyson posts a response to Terrence Howard's criticisms of Neil deGrasse Tyson's criticisms, and says basically, look, I met this guy, and he sent me his scholarly paper, and I did for him what I do to any colleague, and I gave him peer review. And some of the review meant that I had to tell him he's wrong about a lot of things.
Yeah.
So unfazed by Neil deGrasse Tyson's criticism, Terrence Howard continues with these, putting forward that he's developed this new system of math, and how 1 times 1 is 2, and there's lots of stuff. I mean, those are the two that leap out at me. Oh, and then he invented new shapes.
Good for him.
Yeah. So he finds himself back on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Terrence
Howard does, and I can't think of his first name. His last name is Weinstein, not Harvey. This guy is a mathematician. And so for 4 hours, the mathematician is on Joe Rogan's podcast with Terrence Howard saying, hey, look, you've got a really cool way of thinking about things, and cool ways of thinking about things helps us develop new ideas and ways of thinking, but you're just unlearned about some things. And he said, I think that you're suffering from, in a lot of ways, the Dunning-Kruger effect. And I thought, what is that? Mm-hmm. So off I dive into what is the Dunning-Kruger effect. So I kind of got ahead of myself. A little while ago, I said that cognitive bias is an umbrella term for these systemic ways that we have corrupt logic and corrupt thinking. One of them is confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out only things that support your position. And another one is called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is where we grossly overappreciate our own abilities. So if you hear somebody say, oh, you've got beginner's luck, that's really what it is. They had beginner's luck. Usually somebody new to something is not going to be good at it. And that made me reflect on how I am better at being a recovering person today because I have failed at it so miserably in the past.
Right.
And so it is from this that I've kind of been building on this week's podcast topic about how my best thinking got me here. So I reflected on, I can remember early on in my recovery when Sean Guy was my sponsor, and I was thinking back on conversations that Sean and I had 20 plus years ago. And I thought, if I could get inside Sean's old Ford Explorer and tell Drew, just shut the fuck up for a little while. Just sit down. You don't have to know it all right now. Just man. But the flip side to that is it is the suffering that I've gone through over the decades that has taught me the most. And so I wondered, if I had that time machine, would I do myself a service or a disservice if I went back in time and tried to explain to younger Drew all the ways that he's about to go wrong in life?
Disservice.
And I think it would be a disservice. I have a richer appreciation for things today. I can feel real, genuine gratitude because I have learned to confront some of my corrupt ways of thinking. Mm-hmm. And the Dunning-Kruger effect, you learn about confirmation bias in law school, along with some other logical fallacies that once somebody explains them to you, you're like, I totally get that. So another one is, I don't know that it has.
Let me jump in here.
Yeah.
Let me say a couple things real quick. All right. So, like when I first came into AA and I got a little bit of time under my belt, I started to think that I was the shit. I started to think that I've got this all figured out. And also, I mean, I'm going to be completely honest. There was a part of me that genuinely thought that I was better than other people that were, still in active addiction. I would never say that out loud, but there was a part of me that felt like, okay, I'm better than this person. I'm making right decisions. Look at me. Everything is going well in my life. I know it all. And then the further I get into sobriety, I realize the removal of the drugs and alcohol was just the tip of the iceberg. That was the beginning of everything. And I had to hit my head against the wall, in a social sense, in a professional sense, to be able to learn, hey, I'm not all that I thought I was. I don't know everything. And the more that I learn, the more I realize how little I do know. And it was kind of settling down into that position of not thinking that I'm better than anyone, not thinking that I'm worse than anyone, just kind of being on the level. And then as far as the Dunning-Kruger effect, what kept on popping in my head was me growing up as a child. And, I think a lot of this is a result of me being adopted and my adoptive parents wanting nothing more than for all of us kids to feel loved and appreciated and encouraged and supported. But literally everything, Marge and I kind of joke about this sometimes, but literally everything I did was, oh, that's so great. I'm so proud of you. That's wonderful. Like I could fail 6th grade and, oh, we love you. That we're so proud of you. Just like they would spin everything into a positive thing. So, and there was confirmation of that, like with my photography. Like I won awards. My name is in, at the Capitol, for photography. It's
you were good at it.
I was good at it, but also I thought that I was the best at it. And when I went to photography school in Ventura, California, I thought I knew it all. And I thought that I could take better photos than anyone in the world. Why? Because that's what I've been told my whole life. I've never been discouraged. I've never been, no, you can't do that. Don't ever try to do that. Like, you're not good enough. Like, no, it was the exact opposite, which in a lot of ways was a really wonderful thing. But in a lot of ways, like, maybe I should have been told, every once in a while, hey, you're really fucked up here. And my dad did do that. One time that really comes to mind was we were in Durango, Colorado on a trip, and I stole a bulldozer. This is during the winter. I stole a bulldozer. No, I stole a truck by this house that we were renting, got the truck stuck in the snow, and then walked back over to where I got the truck and found the keys to a bulldozer, or a backhoe, like a big ass backhoe. And I drove that over to pull the truck out, completely damaged the back of this truck, and then got a big scoop of snow, drove it down to the house that we were staying in, and dumped it on top of my brother's car. Well, cops show up. They see the tracks down to my brother's car. They see a bucket of snow on top of my brother's car. Long story short, I got arrested. I was released, but my dad and I had to come back to court in Durango. But on the way,
how old were you?
16, maybe 15. No, I was in high school, so 15 or 16. On the way back, my dad said something that was completely honest. He said, well, you really fucked up this time. And he said it with just the most seriousness. Like, he was, I fucked up. So with the exception of a few instances like that, I was always told that I was great. I was perfect. There was nothing wrong with me. Keep going. We're proud of you. And then, that kind of trickled into my adult life. Like, I never thought that I could do anything wrong.
As a result, you would have had a more difficult time honing the skill of honest self-criticism.
Right. I didn't have self-criticism. But at the same time, there was a part of me that thought that I was worse than anyone else and that I was unlovable and no one could possibly ever love me. But I would juggle between that and thinking that, oh my God, I am better than everyone. I'm so talented. My parents told me so. And I'm going to be a rock star. I'm going to be a rock star. And I've gotten past that a lot with a lot of therapy and kind of working through those things because they don't serve me anymore. But there's still a little bit of like, I do think that I'm better than a lot of people, but today, like, that's backed up by hard fucking work. I work harder than a lot of people, and I focus on the things that I'm building 100%. And I get like tunnel vision, like this studio. Once I start going, like, I'm not going to stop until it's the best of the best of the best, and I can help the most people possible. So, I still struggle with that laser focus on doing things that I'm passionate about. But yeah, the whole me feeling as though I'm kind of better than others, and also, I definitely struggle with that. And also on the confirmation bias, I think it's human nature. When I'm watching TikTok and I see a TikTok that's just egregious, right? And I run to the comments and I see all of these people saying the exact same thing that I'm thinking. I am tempted to hop on there as a keyboard warrior and say, yeah, me too. But I see like thousands of people doing the exact same thing, and I have a pause. I'm like, whoa, hold on. What's the other side of this story? There's always two sides to a story. So today I'm a lot better at, approaching things like Joe Rogan does. Joe Rogan does not approach anything with confirmation bias or any kind of bias. Joe Rogan approaches talking with people from an attitude of curiosity. He always has. So he's curious, even like Terrence Howard, who's clearly out of his mind in some respects.
Out of his mind.
But Joe Rogan has him on because he's curious, right? He's not, he's genuinely curious about all all avenues, all thoughts. And I think that is a massive, massive asset to a human being. Being able to watch that TikTok and say, oh, yeah, I see all of these people talking trash about this person, but I'm also curious about what the other side of this looks like. So, and all of that is due to me getting sober and going to a lot of meetings and listening to a lot of people talk about, different sides, and me being able to create an opinion of my own that has nothing to do with what these people think or what these people think. It's generally what I think. But all of that is a result of me hitting my head time and time again with these social issues and issues that I deal with on a regular basis, that I'm now able to look at, in a neutral sense without jumping to one side or the other.
Well, and that's absolutely kind of the heart of this, is being able to hear someone's possibly contrary opinion and critically assess, critically review my own beliefs and see if they can withstand some level of scrutiny.
Right.
It's interesting how it seems like life is trying to find that Goldilocks zone. Mm-hmm. I see with having my own kids, well, consequences have taught me far more than my victories did.
100%.
In life. And you think, okay, well, I'm going to let my child suffer some consequences, but then you don't want to go too far and be like this cold tyrant.
Yeah.
That
dark and sadistic and evil.
All right, look, let's move on to a couple other,
shall we?
Modes of cognitive bias. So I had to write these down.
Sure.
Because I'm less familiar with some of the others. Because I don't have my glasses on, I got to make it bigger. Declinism. I
was just thinking that same thing.
I know, right? It's on the tip of your tongue.
Yep.
I had not seen this one articulated like this. We romanticize the past and believe that society and institutions are in decline. This is the old man yelling at clouds, Simpsons meme. Where you think, oh, what are them kids doing these days? They're up to no good. And I am now old enough to where I think, what are these kids doing these days? Like, how do they think some of these things?
Well, it's because they're eating Tide Pods.
That doesn't help any.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. This one I thought was pretty good. The framing effect. We draw different conclusions based on how an idea is presented to us. And I thought, how interesting is that? So if I met somebody and I said, yeah, man, look, I know the way to help you get off drugs. We're going to go hang around a bunch of ex-cons and felons and ne'er-do-wells, and some of them are criminals and some have been to prison. We're going to hang out with them, and then we're going to be better for it. That sounds a lot less appealing than we're going to go to a meeting of like-minded people who have had a similar problem and who have found a way out. I mean, that sounds a lot more palatable.
Absolutely.
Okay. Hang on, let me go to this other page. The self-serving bias. This is the tendency to blame external forces when bad things happen and give yourself credit when good things happen. So, for example,
pointing the fucking finger.
You win a poker hand, and you won that poker hand because of your superior mathematics skills, your superior abilities to read your opponents. But when you lose an identical hand, that's good. Look, shit happens. That's bad luck. That guy got lucky. So you tend to, your logic and your worldview would tend to put you in a position of superior intellect when maybe that's not warranted.
I like it. I like it.
Well, I can see how that really was in effect when I was using. So if you use for long enough, what you're going to do, like the law of averages comes into play. So if I am, the more I use drugs, and we're all talking about using them daily because that's what it's going to end up being, then that will increase the number of times that you operate your vehicle under the influence. And it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. And for a very long time, I got away with it. And it led me to really thinking that I was just better at doing drugs and using drugs than those idiots that they were kind of in my sphere that found themselves getting arrested. Like, you're not
a good criminal.
You're not planning well enough. And eventually what happens is you go to the dope boy's house at 2 a.m, 3 a.m, and you're just begging to get arrested when you're out and about at 2 or 3 a.m. Period. The end. Not to mention the likelihood of having an accident, a car accident. Yeah. So I may know a little bit about this. I ran into a car one time. Have I talked about this on the show? Like, I really lived in this false sense of, well, that kind of thing just doesn't happen to me. And I passed out at the wheel and plowed into a parked car. And I tore my car up, tore up the car I hit. I'm sure I didn't stay there very long to find out. So I get down, I kind of come to, and I think I got to get out of here. So I drove off, airbag everywhere, car dented in, all that. And I kind of get down the street and I think, damn, you may be hurt. Like, you might actually need medical attention. So the ins and outs of that particular story aren't necessarily germane to our topic today.
Sure.
But needless to say, I operated my life with a certain belief that I was immune to some consequences because I was just better at things. Mm-hmm. And it catches up to you.
Yeah.
So we must be aware of the self-serving bias.
Yeah, I mean, I'll touch on that real quick. I definitely struggle with that, and I remember, like, when I was staying at your house, and we went one day to go get some dope down in Jackson somewhere, and you were like nodding in and out. That has nothing to do with this, but that is a memory that is forever burned into my mind. So yeah, I definitely, while you haven't, I don't think you've talked about that wreck. I believe it. We did some stupid shit when we were out there. Yeah, no, go on. What's the next one?
Okay. Attentional bias.
Attentional?
Attentional.
Uh-huh.
This is the tendency to pay attention to some things while simultaneously ignoring others. For example, when making a decision on which car to buy, you may pay attention to the look and feel of the exterior and interior, but ignore the safety record and gas mileage. And I thought, man, I know I'm guilty of that by being selective with the things that I want to pay attention to and ignoring the consequence, other information that doesn't ultimately support what I want.
Right.
I mean, how often do people in recovery do that?
All the time.
all the time.
All the time.
Stated another way, you hear what you want to hear.
Right. Yeah. And I have a tendency to kind of romanticize the past a little bit and to only remember, like, this is one thing that I'll touch on. So, especially in early sobriety, I was very, very quick to, I mean, I didn't intentionally do this, but I was like, the past is the past. I want to move past this. And I would start to, only think about the good times that I had. Well, I remember that time, like when Drew and I were at his house and we were doing hot rails, and then I weeded the backyard. Like, I really had a good time. I think that might be a great idea again. Like, those thoughts did come through my head. What I put aside was, I was miserable and depressed. Drew had tinfoil on his windows, and the kitchen window was broken out. He was in his bathroom shooting up dope. I was in the hallway or in the den smoking dope. Your drug dealer had taken your TV or something. You had traded it for something else. And then there was this other guy that was in the kitchen, like taking apart, I won't say his name, but taking apart computers and putting them back together with like Wi-Fi's, like
tweaking hard.
With these wireless Wi-Fi antennas that he built that could pick up Wi-Fi signals from the moon.
It was a tweaker's paradise.
And it was in like this beautiful neighborhood in Flowood.
What must my neighbors have thought?
Oh my God. Man, I don't even know where I was going with that.
Well, it's the tendency to romanticize.
Yes.
Very, very narrow snippets.
Right.
Of a whole story.
Yeah. So like looking back on that now, like that was like my stance on that now was, wow, we were tragically lost. Like that was everything about that scenario was awful and disgusting and horrible. But my mind had the capability of, let's just not think about all of that stuff and let's think about how great we feel and how we felt like a Superman when that first hit of meth took over, right. Like that was fun and I'm feeling really bad right now. And I know that this would make me feel better, but it's important. Like what I've learned the longer that I've stayed sober is, look, it's important to it's important to remember, let's not shut the door on the past, but let's not forget the past. And the past was, life was miserable. We were heading nowhere fast and we were going to die. Certainly if we were still in active addiction, one of those baggies of meth would have contained fentanyl in it. There's no question about it. Period. End of story. One of those baggies and we would be dead. Like there's just no question about it. So I think it's very important to remember the past and how awful that was. And that's one of the reasons that going to so many meetings is important for me, because you go to enough meetings, you're going to have first step meetings, right? You're going to have people coming in talking about, they went back out. It was miserable. They thought it was going to be fun. There was not a single second about it that was fun. They felt like crap the whole entire time. And it's times like those that remind me that, hey, whoa. You may think that things are going well right now, but if I let up on my spiritual program of action, I'm going to be right back where that guy was. And in a matter of hours, I could be where that guy is saying, I thought I could do it. I thought things would get better. I thought that things would, the drugs and alcohol would make me feel better. I was completely wrong. And life is miserable now. And now I'm in self-loathing. I hate myself. I hate everyone around me. And it's all because I made one decision to try to make myself feel better with drugs or alcohol. So I try to focus. Again, I don't want to shut the door on the past, because the past for me is the best way that I learn, right? It's my past teaches me more than any book or any seminar could ever teach me. So it's important for me to not shut the door, but also remember the past. Like those times were not fun. Let me say this. There were a few times using drugs and alcohol where I did genuinely have a great time. Like the first time I did cocaine in Mexico, we walked around for hours. It was pure cocaine, walked around for hours. I was convinced that I knew how to speak Spanish, and I was, and we were going to all the pharmacies around there. Me and this girl were walking around. Her boyfriend was passed out in the hotel, and we were just walking around. Like that was the greatest I've ever felt in my life. So I'm not going to lie. Like drugs and alcohol work until they stop working. And they stopped working for me. So, yeah, I did have fun times with drugs and alcohol, but they stopped working. And I'll never be able to go back to walking around Mexico thinking that I know how to speak Spanish, although I know how to speak maybe 4 to 5 words of Spanish. I'll never get back. It will never be good.
Right.
Drugs and alcohol will never be good ever again. And I've put that theory to test over and over and over again, countless times, maybe 15, 20 times. I've put that theory to test. Each and every time, life turns out worse when I go back to drugs and alcohol. So I finally reached the point where, hey, you know what? That's not going to help you. It's not going to help you at all. In fact, it's going to exacerbate the problems that you're and the feelings that you're feeling right now. So I kind of went off on a tangent, but go on. What's the next?
Well, all of these are a type of logical fallacy. And I mentioned earlier how you learn about some of these in law school, and confirmation bias you certainly hear about. And then there's another one that has a fancy sounding Latin name, post hoc ergo propter hoc, which means after it, therefore because of it. So the best example that I can give of this is I was on Clay Edwards' radio show, and we had an exchange about mass shooters and taking Zoloft. And he was offering this up as to mean that Zoloft turns you into a school shooter. And I cautioned him on the not giving in to post hoc ergo propter hoc, after it, therefore because of it. So, like I said to him, some of those people may have taken Zoloft, no doubt, but I bet all of those people also drank water, and we wouldn't say that water causes school shootings. I mean, just because something happens after an event, just because an event occurs after an initial event does not mean that initial event caused it.
Right.
So we have to be on guard for this.
Do you have an example of that in your life?
Well, I'm trying to think of one in addiction, but this one came to mind. If you look, so I learned this from Neil deGrasse Tyson, who told the story of how in the Middle Ages, the plague is ravaging Europe, and they did not know at the time that the plague was spread primarily by fleas. That there were fleas on the mice. The mice hop off the flea hops off the mouse, hops onto you, and you get the plague. And that people that had cats would have fewer mice, and thus people with cats didn't get the plague. And so this kind of supported the idea that that lady is a witch because she has not gotten the plague, so she must be able to cast spells and things like that. And I thought, wow, logically that makes sense if you don't have a mastery of all of the information available. That is a certain bit of logic that they employed to come up with, oh, this lady has not gotten the plague, but everybody else has. And the only logical explanation for that must be that she's a witch, not that she has a cat that killed all the mice, and therefore there were no fleas to give her the plague.
Right.
And we do this all the time. We tend to think, oh, the reason I'm suffering this consequence is anything that is not that I engaged in drug or alcohol abuse. We preferential post hoc ergo propter hoc, like it must be something that happened before, but that thing cannot be my drug addiction.
Yeah.
Like we want to focus it on anything. Oh, it's my wife misunderstood. My teacher didn't appreciate me. My parents misunderstood. My boss was hypercritical when he shouldn't have been. It's anything and everything, but we won't link it back to our drug addiction or our drug use.
Right.
And like, how many stories do we all have where we suffered a consequence that can pretty fairly honestly be traced back? The thing that started this problem was drinking and using.
Right.
When you go out and engage in the kind of substance abuse that you and I are prone to, then we open ourselves up to all kinds of other consequences.
Right.
You might be riding in a car and somebody, you're not driving, you're a passenger, and somebody hits you. Well, if I hadn't been out at 2 a.m. at the bar, this wouldn't have happened.
Right.
Now, no, I'm not saying that you cannot be out at 2 o'clock in the morning. And yes, I'm saying that, sometimes bad things happen when it's not your fault. But more times than not, our drinking and using is what was the impetus for our engaging in whatever it is that caused the problem.
Yeah, it's easy to trace things back oftentimes. Like, I've gotten to the point where I am acutely aware of my actions and how they could possibly, for instance, let me just say this. So when I'm driving to a job site, right, I've got the address typed into the GPS. One of the routes is the blue recommended route that Google recommends, right?
Right, yeah.
And the other route is a light blue route that is, similar ETA, right? I've gotten to a point where I'm like, I feel like the recommended path is God saying, hey, I want you to go this way. And when the light blue, if it looks faster or something like that, the first thought that comes into my head, maybe I'm like, I overanalyze this, but the first thought that comes into my head is, well, maybe this is God, like a gentle nudge that, hey, this is the right path that I want you to have. And if I were to go that way, I would get in a car wreck or get killed or something bad like that would happen. So I am very quick to look for and recognize what I think could be, signs and signals from God to kind of go this way or don't go this way. And, I think for me, it's important to keep an open mind and as far as, being willing to follow the path that I feel like I'm supposed to follow, and don't take that little path that goes off to the side that may have the similar ETA time, but there could be dangers along the way. And this is the path that GPS is saying. So why not go with that? And I don't know. I've gotten to like a weird kind of like spiritual, like, hey, no, this is the right path. I know this is the right path. Let's go. And that transfers into all areas of my life, that I'm very, very quick to recognize, hey, yeah, I could do this action. I could go to this place. I could go to this place, but is that right for me? Is that where I need to be? And that, to kind of tie it back into what you're saying, when I was in drugs, and active addiction, and I would be driving to the dope man's house at, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, there's no telling what I got very lucky. You
did.
But had something happened, that wouldn't have happened had I not been going to the dope man's house. So I try to tie it all together and recognize that, hey, there is a right way and a wrong way to do things. There's also a right way and a shortcut way, and that shortcut oftentimes could mean danger. So I try to stay on the straight and narrow and go with what I feel like is right these days. Sometimes I do take that shorter route. but those times are few and far between. I do believe that I kind of went completely off topic with that. But what's the next thing you got there?
Well, there's a whole host of these, and you can get as deep off into the rabbit hole here as you want, and apply it to any number of fields. Religious beliefs. Religious beliefs may be the most apt to succumb to some of these things. For example, apophenia, the tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. For example, if you think that God is speaking to you through the Waze app or the Google GPS, you may be suffering from apophenia.
What?
I'm saying if you believe that God is speaking to you through the GPS function of Google Maps, you may suffer. You may be suffering from apophenia.
I think it's possible. Yeah.
It is possible.
Yeah.
But
maybe not speaking, but just a gentle nudge like, hey, I'm going to protect you. Go this way.
And this leads us to the difference between possible and probable, and possibilities and probabilities. So anyway, I'm just saying you can get as deep into this as you want, and religious beliefs would be particularly susceptible to this because of the inherent lack of provability in a lot of it. Well, how do you know God said? Well, I just feel it. That's not exactly a testable hypothesis.
Sure, it's not scientific, but that's what faith is.
Yes, to explain the unexplainable. So another one that keeps popping up everywhere is the availability heuristic, also known as the availability bias. This is the tendency to overestimate the likelihood of events with greater availability in memory, which can be influenced by how recent the memories are or how unusual or emotionally charged they may be. These include the anthropocentric thinking, the tendency to use human analogies as a basis of reasoning. Okay. Anthropomorphism, that's when dogs talk. These aren't speaking to me. All of these really should lead us back to the idea that your best thinking got you a seat in your recovery place, whatever that is. And if you cannot accept that you may need some other person's perspective, some other person's challenge to your beliefs, then you're going to find yourself in trouble. I dare say that you may be able to stay sober, because I've seen people that stayed sober through being miserable for long periods of time. But you're going to steal from your future self a lot of the benefits that recovery has to offer. Mm-hmm. You will steal from yourself gratitude. You will steal from yourself peace of mind. You will steal from yourself general serenity. And it's uncomfortable in the beginning, but it is, in my mind, the essence of what the fourth and fifth step are. So you write down, for those that aren't overly familiar, you write down your moral inventory, and then you tell it to somebody. That's the fourth and fifth step, respectively. And you hope that you leave having done your fifth step with the following in mind, that, boy, it's hard to avoid the realization that I am the common denominator in all of these bad things. Like, I played a role, sometimes big, sometimes small, but I played a role in all of these things. And once you're willing to accept that you may not possess the best and only ways to think about a particular problem, then you're on the road to recovery.
I don't think there's a better way to end than that right there.
That's it. In a nutshell.
Thank you for everyone joining us today. We appreciate you. Hope you learned something. Hope today was helpful in some way, shape, or form. And you got anything else you want to say before we cut?
No, that's it. This was interesting for me.
It was good. It was
a lot of cool things to think about.
Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week on the Recovery Lab podcast.